Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're really getting into something big, a concept that's changing how we view chronic health stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty fundamental. We're talking fatigue, inflammation, that feeling of just being stuck.
Exactly. Where you feel like you're doing all the right things, ticking all the boxes, but your body just isn't, well, healing.
Mm-hmm. And for this deep dive, we've looked at some great source material, particularly insights from a discussion between Dr. Michael Ruscio and Dr. Paul Anderson. They really unpack this well.
They do. So our mission today is to really understand the core of our cell's energy, the mitochondria, and link that to this fascinating idea, the cell danger response.
Right. We want to help you figure out what might be happening deep down at a cellular level when you feel stuck in that chronic state.
And crucially, what these experts suggest you might be able to actually do about it.
Think of this as like a shortcut to understanding the mechanics behind why you feel unwell and maybe why the path to getting better looks a bit different than you thought.
Okay, so we'll cover what mitochondria are, the basics, but also their other roles, how they get damaged in today's world.
Uh-huh. And the signs to look for, the clues that yours might be struggling.
Then we'll introduce this cell danger response, why it's such a key concept.
And then, yeah, the strategies. What steps the experts suggest for recovery?
Okay, let's dig in.
So, mitochondria, we learn in school the powerhouses, right? Making ATP the energy currency.
It's fuel, yeah. But the sources really emphasize this dual role they have. They're not just factories.
Sentinels, that's the word they use, and it's perfect.
Sentinels. Explain that a bit.
Well, they're constantly checking the environment inside the cell, looking for stress signals. And that's not just like physical injury.
It's emotional stress, too.
Yeah, inflammation, infections, toxins. They sense it all. They're like the cell's early warning system.
And they're not spread out evenly, are they? That seems important.
Super important. Your brain, your heart organs needing tons of energy have thousands per cell.
Wow, thousands.
Yeah. Muscles, maybe a few hundred. Gut, liver, kind of in between.
So if your mitochondria are struggling overall,
You'll probably feel it first in those high-demand areas.
brain fog, sleep problems, that kind of thing.
Exactly. That fatigue that just hits deep. It starts to make sense why those symptoms are so common in chronic illness.
And it links things together, too. The sources mentioned the brain-gut connection.
Right. If the brain mitochondria are struggling, the brain doesn't have the energy to properly signal and regulate the gut.
So gut problems could actually stem from an energy deficit in the brain, not just a gut issue itself.
It could be a major factor, yeah. It just shows how interconnected everything is. The body's not separate compartments.
Okay, so they're vital, they're sensitive. How do they get damaged? Is it one big hit?
Sometimes, maybe. But the sources emphasize it's often more of a slow burn. Cumulative stress.
Just modern life wearing them down.
Pretty much. Persistent stress, environmental stuff that our bodies didn't really evolve to handle at this scale.
Like what? What are the big triggers?
Well, chronic sleep disruption is a huge one. Not just getting too little sleep, but poor quality sleep, irregular schedules.
And the light thing. Screens at night.
Definitely. That blue light messes with their natural repair cycles. Mitochondria need downtime to regenerate, and that gets disrupted.
Okay.
Macronutrient deficiencies, even if you think you're eating well.
If your gut isn't absorbing properly.
Exactly. If digestion's off, you might not be getting those essential vitamins and minerals they need to function. B vitamins, magnesium, CoQ10.
And toxins. That seems like a big modern factor.
Massive. Heavy metals, chemicals and plastics, pesticides, mycotoxins from mold, other biotoxins. The load is just way higher than it used to be. They disrupt cellular balance, homeostasis.
And the mitochondria are right there on the front lines, sensing it.
Yep. And it leads to these awful loops, right? Poor gut means poor absorption, which starves mitochondria.
And struggling mitochondria mean the brain can't regulate the gut well, making the gut worse.
Or bad sleep hurts mitochondria, which then messes up sleep regulation hormones, leading to worse sleep. It's a cycle.
Feels like quicksand sometimes.
Totally. But the good news, according to the sources, is understanding the loop gives you places to intervene. You can break the cycle.
Okay, so if someone's listening and thinking, this sounds familiar, how do they know if mitochondrial issues are a big part of their picture?
Look for patterns. The experts mention two common ones. One is that long, slow slide.
Where things just gradually got worse over years.
Yeah. More fatigue, more aches, focus slipping, symptoms just stacking up slowly. That points to something chronic, cumulative.
And the other pattern?
Is more like falling off a cliff, a really rapid decline in health.
Often after something specific.
Usually, yeah. A
Yeah.
bad infection. Long COVID is a prime example now, or like moving into a moldy house. Something kicks it off, and boom, health tanks.
What about the symptoms themselves?
They tend to be pretty global constitutional because mitochondria are everywhere. Fatigue is almost always there. That's core.
Brain fog, memory stuff.
Yep. Neurological symptoms are common because the brain is so energy hungry,
Mm.
sleep issues, concentration problems.
Muscle aches, too.
Often, yeah. And feeling wiped out after exercise, like you just can't recover the way you used to.
There was a really interesting clue mentioned in the sources. Something about fasting or low-carb diets.
Ah, yes. That was fascinating. Basically, an intolerance to fasting or trying keto or low carb.
Why would that be a sign of mitochondrial problems?
Because carbs are the easy fuel, right? Burning fat is a more complex metabolic process. It requires more healthy mitochondrial function.
So if your mitochondria are weak,
They struggle to make that shift to burning fat efficiently. Trying to force it makes you feel awful, shaky, exhausted, brain foggy.
so it's not necessarily that low carb is bad for you.
It might just be that your cellular machinery isn't up to the task right now. That craving for simple carbs could even be your body desperately seeking the easiest possible energy source.
Like a weak gut struggling with fiber. Weak mitochondria struggle with fats.
Exactly. So don't necessarily force it, but use that reaction as a piece of information, a clue about your cellular health.
Okay, this is where it all starts to tie together, right?
Right.
This concept of the cell danger response, CDR.
Yes. This is like the core mechanism explaining why the body gets stuck in these chronic states. It's based on work by researchers like Dr. Navillo.
So what is it? What is the CDR?
It's essentially a protective mode, a universal response cells go into when they face persistent danger. Could be toxins, infections, chronic stress, you name it.
It's meant to help the cells survive an immediate threat.
Right, but instead of powering through or focusing on repair and building new mitochondria, that's called mitogenesis, the cell basically hits the emergency brake.
How does that work?
Mitochondria deliberately downshift energy production. Way down. The sources mentioned maybe operating at like 20% capacity instead of 100%.
Wow. Multiply that across trillions of cells.
And you can see why you'd feel chronically exhausted, foggy, just generally unwell. It's not necessarily breakdown, it's a program survival strategy. Protection over performance.
And here's a critical point from the sources. Trying to push too hard, too fast with treatments when cells are in CDR can backfire.
Yes, precisely.
Right.
Because many aggressive treatments can temporarily increase inflammation or oxidative stress.
Which is exactly the danger signal the cell is trying to shield itself from.
Right. The cell's in lockdown. Throwing more danger at it can just make it clamp down harder.
So the goal isn't brute force.
No. It's about creating safety. Addressing the reason the cell went into lockdown, the root cause, the wedge they call it.
While gently supporting the system.
Exactly. Gently coaxing the cell out of that danger response, slow and steady. That's why, for example, just aggressively killing an infection without managing the inflammation can make people crash. You're creating too many danger signals.
Okay, so how do we create that safety? How do we help mitochondria recover and nudge cells out of CDR?
It's a layered approach. Starts with the foundation. The experts call it the 3 pillars.
Food, muscle, brain. Let's break those down. Food.
Cleaning up the diet is step 1. Getting rid of the obvious junk processed foods, preservatives, artificial colors, simple sugars. Moving towards whole, nutrient-dense foods. Hydration's key too. And focusing on absorption, not just eating healthy food, maybe needing digestive support.
And they mentioned timing, like fasting.
Yeah, aiming for maybe a 12 or 13-hour overnight fast seems to support autophagy. That's the cell's cleanup process, getting rid of damaged parts, including old mitochondria.
And then maybe lower carb later.
Gradually, yeah, if tolerated. As the mitochondria get healthier, you might be able to retrain them to handle fats better, but gently.
Okay, pillar 2, muscle.
Movement is crucial. Muscle isn't just for moving, it sends out healing signals, anti-inflammatory molecules called myokines.
While fat tissue sends out inflammatory signals.
Generally, yes. So activating muscle helps reduce inflammation systemically, can even help heal things like the blood-brain barrier.
Doesn't have to be intense marathon training.
No, just consistent movement, avoid being sedentary, walk, stretch, whatever you can manage and build from there.
And the third pillar, brain.
This is about managing stress, obviously, but also managing inputs.
Meaning.
Like being mindful of constantly flooding your nervous system with stressful news or negative social media. That keeps the threat signal switched on. So, mind-body practices, but also curating your information environment.
Okay, foundation laid. What's next?
Nervous system support comes up strongly, specifically vagal nerve stimulation, VNS.
Why the vagus nerve?
It's the main nerve of the parasympathetic system, the rest, digest, and heal system. It connects the brain to the gut and many other organs.
So stimulating it helps shift out of that stressed fight-or-flight mode.
Exactly. It sends signals up to the brain saying, hey, it's safe, which helps calm the whole system and can encourage cells to exit the CDR. And there are easy ways to do it now, like passive VNS devices using earbuds.
Interesting. And then there are nutrients.
Right.
Specific support for the mitochondria.
Yeah, but these support the foundation. They don't replace it. Focus on the core stuff first.
Like carnitine?
Crucial. It helps shuttle fats into the mitochondria to be burned for energy. If you're low, that's another reason why low carb feels awful.
Antioxidants seem key too.
Absolutely essential. Glutathione, vitamin C, vitamin E. The CDR itself and just making energy generates oxidative stress-free radicals. Antioxidants are the cleanup crew. You need them to handle the mess.
B vitamins.
Minerals.
Foundational. They're cofactors for everything. Can't make energy without them, especially important for making NAD.
And things like CoQ10 and alpha-lipoic acid.
Yep, important players right inside the mitochondria, helping with energy production and recycling antioxidants like glutathione.
NAD gets a lot of attention. Why is it important here?
NAD plus is like the critical first step in the main energy production pathways. If NAD plus levels are low, the whole process slows right down.
So taking precursors like NR or NMN can help.
They can, especially if energy is really low.
Yeah.
But the sources stress they need sufficient B vitamins, especially B3, to work properly. You can't just flood the system with precursors without the other building blocks. Methylene blue was also mentioned.
As an adjunct, yeah. It can help speed things up within the mitochondria. But strong caution there, only use pharmaceutical-grade pure sources. Impurities can be toxic, completely defeating the purpose. Use with guidance.
Okay, what about external therapies? Things you do to the body.
Red and near-infrared light therapy comes up. Mitochondria have photoreceptors. They respond well to specific wavelengths of light.
So it's a gentle way to stimulate them.
And reduce inflammation, yeah, seems quite promising and generally well tolerated.
And hyperbaric oxygen therapy, HBOT.
That's a powerful one. Breathing pure oxygen under pressure saturates tissues with O2.
Which mitochondria desperately need to make ATP efficiently.
Exactly. Plus, the pressure cycles seem to trigger antioxidant defenses and reduce inflammation over time. Home units are making it more accessible now, which is a big deal.
Okay, lots of potential support there. But the sources kept coming back to one point as the absolute most critical.
The wedge.
Addressing the root cause.
Yes. You absolutely have to find and address whatever is keeping the cells in that danger state. The chronic infection, the mold exposure, the heavy metals, the unresolved trauma, whatever the main driver is.
Because otherwise, all the support in the world won't lead to lasting recovery.
Exactly. You might feel a bit better, but the system will just keep getting triggered back into the CDR if the primary offense isn't dealt with. You can't heal fully while you're still being injured.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
Which brings us to another really key takeaway. How to understand when you feel worse trying these things.
The Herxheimer reaction, or just feeling flared up. This is so important.
It doesn't necessarily mean stop.
Often, no. In the context of CDR and mitochondrial recovery, feeling worse initially can mean the therapy is working. It's stimulating the system.
But the system can't keep up with the cleanup.
Precisely. You're mobilizing stored toxins from cells, or there's inflammation from damaged cells being cleared out, and your detox pathways, liver, kidneys, lymph, or your antioxidant reserves are overwhelmed.
So it's actually a signal.
A signal for personalization. It likely means you need more support for those elimination pathways, binders, liver support, drainage, or more antioxidants. Or you just need to go slower with the therapy that triggered it.
Don't just abandon ship at the first sign of turbulence.
Right. Use it as feedback. The sources mentioned HBOT sometimes makes inflammation worse for the first 5-10 sessions before it starts to drop. That's the cleanup phase. Consistency and working with someone who gets this is key.
So even feeling wiped out after gentle exercise could be that same mechanism.
Could be. Not that exercise is bad, but the body's capacity to handle the metabolic demand and the subsequent cleanup is just too low at that moment. Go gentler, support detox, build up slowly. The sources also touched briefly on some newer things like peptides, SS31, MOTSC.
Yeah, what's the idea there?
They're different from nutrients. They act more like signaling molecules. They can potentially help reconnect or repair specific mitochondrial pathways that get shut down or damaged in the CDR state, sort of like reminding the cell how to heal itself. Oral versions are becoming more available too.
Interesting. Okay, let's try to wrap this all up. What's the big picture message for someone listening?
It's that understanding mitochondria as these sensitive sentinels and understanding the cell danger response as this protective but often persistent state. It really changes how you look at chronic illness.
It's often not just one thing wrong, but a system-wide response to cumulative stress, leading to an energy crisis, because cells are hunkering down for survival.
Yeah. And recovery isn't about finding one magic bullet, usually. It's layered.
Starting with that foundation, food, muscle, brain, getting those right creates the safety signal.
Then you layer on nervous system support like VNS, targeted nutrients for the mitochondria, maybe external therapies like light or HBOT.
But always needing to address that root cause, the wedge, keeping the danger signal on.
Absolutely. And remembering that feeling worse sometimes isn't failure, it's feedback. It means you need more support for the transition or a slower pace. It guides your path.
Patience seems key. This isn't an overnight fix.
Definitely not. It's understanding a deep biological process. And if you want to dive deeper into the source ideas, Dr. Paul Anderson's website, doordannow.com, was mentioned as a good resource.
Okay, so here's a final thought to leave you with. Think about all those common chronic symptoms that often seem unrelated. The brain fog, the deep fatigue, the gut issues, the muscle pain, the poor recovery.
Could mitochondrial dysfunction driven by the cell danger response be the underlying thread connecting many of them? It's a powerful question to consider.
Hang in there. Just understanding this process, even when it feels complex or highlights why things have been so tough, is a really vital step forward.